Hey, Mike Matthews here, physical therapist with the PT 411. Today I wanted to talk about the low back, or rather the entire spine for that matter, and a mistake I made from an early age that led to a lot of low back and neck pains, a mistake that it could have been remedied very easily. I spent quite a bit of time in the training room. I saw a physical therapist, I saw a chiropractor, I saw multiple people in my off time. I had x-rays, I had an MRI, and things got very complicated very quickly. People trying to look for asymmetries, trying to look for disc bulges, trying to find a whole bunch of different issues with me. But my back pain kept reoccurring. So the natural next step in the thought process was that it was genetics. Multiple people in my family that have had neck and back pains in the past, and reoccurring pains for that matter, some of them eventually leading to surgeries. So we just think everything is genetics, everything is passed down. And thinking back on it, yes, to an extent it was hereditary, but not necessarily genetics. From a very young age, we learn how to sit, how to stand, how to walk from those closest around us. This usually includes our parents, aunts and uncles, other parents, people that are already doing this, those that are surrounding us. So growing up trying to learn all these functional movements and postures, we end up developing the same bad habits as everyone around us. And basically, there was this running joke for me and my cousins when we were playing football growing up. You could spot us without even looking for our football number. We're the ones walking around on the sideline or going out into the field with our hips tucked down, our back flattened out, and having a very distinct walk and posture out there on the field that was very distinguishable. So you've probably figured out my mistake by now. It's posture. It has nothing to do with uneven or asymmetrical hips. Asymmetry is the norm. Almost everybody has a leg length discrepancy, one leg, one foot that's at least a little longer than the other. Almost everybody's pelvis is tilted at least with one side, one direction or the other, and that's very normal and not indicative of a problem at all. And most of the time when we start having back pain, it's discounted as just a muscle strain. Well, muscles very rarely actually get thrown out in the back. And if you're having back pain that resolves quicker than 6 weeks, we can completely roll out it being any sort of muscle strain, because muscle strains will not heal that quickly. So going back to the issue at hand, posture. Why is it so important? I'll try to keep this quick. Nobody wants to be lectured on their posture for very long. If you were to image search a picture of a spine from the side right now, what would you see? Would you see something flat going straight up and down right there? No, you wouldn't. You would see something curved like this. This from the front on this side and the back on this side. You would see this top area right here is curved forward. That's your neck right there. Your middle area, your thoracic spine, curves back this way. You look back at your lumbar spine, your lower back, it's gonna curve forward again, and then down at your sacrum, it's gonna curve back right here. So we're just gonna look at that lumbar spine, that lower back area right here, and I have it broken down a little bit right here. You have 5 vertebrae right here, and then in between them, you have your discs. Now looking at it right here, we have that nice curve right there, which is actually that neutral curve. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second, but as long as we have that nice neutral curve right there, our discs have an equal amount of weight getting distributed through the front and through the back of those discs, so we don't have any abnormal compression happening, forcing the disc in any wrong direction right there. Everything is nice and upright, nice and neutral right there. Everything is nice and healthy in this position. Now let's just take one segment of this spine right here. Let's take these top vertebrae right here, and we're gonna look at it right here. If I were to flatten out my back right here, and I'm not even saying bending forward, but flatten my back out right here, 2 things end up happening. One, the back of the spine, the entire back of the spine opens up. The entire front of the spine where these discs are closes down. But not only that, most of that compression on that disc happens way more forward than it does backwards. So now not only are you having compression going through the whole disc, the majority of that compression is happening more forward, and this disc right here has nothing to do but start traveling backwards, which under normal circumstances it's supposed to do that. And then when we come back up to neutral, everything slides back forward and everything's nice and neutral again. And from here, if we were to bend forward even more down here. Now we're having even more compression throughout the entire disc. Even more of it's happening up here at the front, and now it's getting forced out even further and further. Whenever we come back upright, everything equally distributes and everything's all good. But what ends up happening over time, if we have that forward flex posture constantly, all that pressure is always more on the discs, especially in that front of the discs. Everything starts getting pushed back even more. This back part of this disc starts to overstretch. So eventually when we come back to that neutral position, now that this is overstretched, we lose that mechanism of that disc to redistribute going forward, and that's what causes these disc bulges out here. And what ends up happening out here in the back, this is where your spinal cord is, back in this area, and this is where all those nerves come off of. So if things go out far enough, now we can start to impinge on those nerves, which can cause pain anywhere along down the back, causing those sciatica type pains or even spot pains that can show up in just random places going down the leg. It can cause weakness, it can cause numbness, tingling, sensations of heat and cold. Now, just to assume that normal posture, we are compressing against a part of the disc that will not go back forward on its own. So we end up avoiding coming back upright to that neutral position, and instead we try to accommodate for that bulge, and it puts us further and further into this position. Before you know it, we're pushing that disc even further and further back here. So our number one goal here is to avoid this. Our number one goal is to prevent this. So to prevent this right here, what we end up needing to do is maintain this nice, neutral, slightly arched posture here. It's not just the interaction between the discs and the vertebral bodies that act this way. There's lots of other structures in the spine that act similarly. As long as we stay in a nice neutral position, we can really reduce our risk of causing injuries. And there's a pretty common argument that I hear about people trying to prevent this position, looking more at the hips. Am I having too much of an anterior pelvic tilt, too much of a posterior tilt? You have many people that don't arch their back enough throughout the day because they're trying to avoid this so-called anterior pelvic tilt. I'm here to tell you that that is bullshit. Now, this whole pelvic tilt debate and diagnosis really started as a very simple tool to teach people on a very individualized level on where just about you need to have your pelvis tilted in various positions and activities to be able to achieve this nice neutral position. And a very common question I get asked, is there too much of an arch that I can get into? If I arch it too much, can it start pushing everything in the other direction? The answer is yes, it can, but it is very, very rare for two different reasons here. If we take the same segment of the spine right here and we go over this way, we have our top level here, and we have our bottom level here. And now we're doing more compression towards the back than the front. So most of the compression is actually occurring right here. And now we're actually getting relative decompression at the spine right here. Yeah, we might get slight compression more in the back, and then things might get forced forward a little bit this way. But for the most part, all the compression is happening further back in the spine, and we're having relative decompression at the front here. Now, if we get to the point where we're here in an extremely arched position here, and then we have a whole bunch of load going forward, yes, this can go way forward here. It can overstretch here. It can start to bulge here, but there's another safety mechanism in place here. You have your anterior longitudinal ligament right here that's very, very thick, very, very strong, that really prevents this disc from going forward. So if you are overarching your back, whether it be a little bit or a lot, you are still at a much, much lower risk of injuring that lower back than if you weren't arching it enough. So the thing is, when we're walking and standing, our spine very naturally likes to get into that nice neutral position. The problem is mainly when we're sitting. Again, just from my last instructional video about the hip, we're always sitting. We're sitting when we're in the car, we're sitting when we're in the classroom, when we're at the office, when we get home at the end of the day, when we're on the couch. So we want to minimize this bad posture while we're sitting as often as we can, because we're not going to be able to prevent it all the time. It's very simple strategies to keep your back nice and neutral when you're sitting. I'm going to show you how to do it in a regular chair, and we'll show you how to adjust your car seat properly to be able to get that nice neutral position there as well. We're going to look at our knees first. We want them to be at about a 90-degree angle. We can tuck them back a little bit more, but we definitely don't want to bring them out in front of us, especially if we have those tight hamstrings, because that will pull our pelvis and our low back into a bad position, in that rounded out position right there, and we've already lost the battle. If our hips are not all the way back in the chair right there, the second I go to lean back right here, we've already lost the battle here. So you are going to lean way forward right here. You're going to bring your hips as far back in that chair as possible. That's going to help to lock that pelvis into place, so that when I go to lean back, now my pelvis does not rotate back, and right here I'm doing very little work, and I can actually put my hand back here and get a little bit of arch right here. To make this even easier, all you need to do is get a rolled up towel. We're going to put it behind your back right here, and we're going to lean back. And with this towel, I just have a couple of little shop towels right here, just to show you right here. You can get any other sort of towel. You want it to be a little loose, so that whenever you pinch down on it, it compresses down to about 1 inch or maybe a little bit less. And the big thing is don't put the towel in first and then try to lean back. You're never going to get your hips all the way back. You got to get those hips back first, then put it back there, and sitting back right here. The big thing is, if you have to rely on your muscles to keep a nice upright posture, you're going to eventually go into energy conservation mode, which means those muscles are going to relax down. Your body's going to rely on passive structures like your ligaments to hold you up, and that's going to be more in this position right here. And the more often you're putting all that pressure on those ligaments, the more they're going to stretch out. Before you know it, that nice passive posture position right here is going to be further forward and more forward over time. So this is also going to save those ligaments and keep them nice and taut and nice and stable over time as well. So by keeping your pelvis nice and locked in place using the back of the chair and using a towel roll behind your back right here, that's going to turn this nice neutral position into a pretty passive position right here, so that you're able to maintain it and you're already in energy conservation mode. So the thing about cars, when they're being designed, they're designed to be comfortable. They're designed to be sold. I'm not saying that car manufacturers don't know what a correct anatomical, neutral, healthy position for the spine is. I'm not saying that at all. They understand that. They have such a good anatomical understanding of the spine. They know that impingements occur. They know these common positions that we get into. They know what's going to be comfortable for our spine. They know how to accommodate for those impingements, which is not necessarily what's going to be good for the long-term health of our spine. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure our seat is in a good position in relation to our steering wheel. We want our seat back relatively upright. You can have it back just a little bit, but we don't want it too far back from the vertical line right here. But we need to get our seat forward enough so that if I bring my hand forward on the steering wheel with my elbows straight, that this steering wheel clears my wrist, so I can rest my wrist straight down right here. We also want to make sure with the steering wheel that it's in a proper position. It's not too low or not too high. It needs to be right in that good neutral position, so that when you're looking through the clearing at the top of the steering wheel right here, you can see all of your gauges right there, so that you're not having to look down or look over the steering wheel right there. We're going to make sure our hips are wedged all the way back in the chair right here. We're going to take our towel roll and put it right above our waistline here. Then we're going to lean back into the chair here. So right here, I'm in a nice neutral position. My hips are wedged back in the chair, blocking my hips from rotating forward, and this is behind my back here. So as far as spine health goes, sitting in your car, there's not that much to it. It's that simple. So what ends up happening, you spend these long periods of time sitting, and you're doing that in this less than ideal posture. Then you get up, everything in your spine is in a less than ideal position. You go to lift something, you go to bend over, you go to twist or jerk really quickly, you go to work out, lifting weights, running, and now something that's already out of place finally has it, something blows out, and then your back goes out. And it's all caused by something very simple that could have been avoided from the get-go. And more often than not, it really is that simple. I hope you all found this video helpful. Again, I'm Mike Matthews with the PT 411. Thanks for joining. Hey, Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you're not already on YouTube, head on over there, hit the like button, definitely hit the subscribe button so you can be notified when I come out with another video. If you want me to address something in a future video, hit me up in the comment section below. But other than that, thanks for joining.